Yeah, here we go again. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. It is December 1st, which means our November campaign is officially over. So you may be asking yourself, Corbin, why are you still wearing a mustache? Well, it's to celebrate. Over the weekend, we got a last-minute donation for our November campaign, which officially put us over the $3,000 mark. Shout out to the individual that donated $800 to push us over that mark. It's absolutely incredible. I can't thank you enough. What that means, though, is that one person who did donate in this campaign is going to win tickets for opening day. If that isn't incredibly exciting, I don't know what is. So thank you to everyone who donated. It was an absolutely fantastic November. We raised over $3,000. Just absolutely fantastic. So thank you. That is more than double what we did last year. Couldn't have done it without you guys. But regardless, I wish I could have put that intro at the beginning of a little bit of a more happy video. Unfortunately, this is not, because while this offseason has been slow in terms of players coming and going here, it's been pretty fast to hit all of sort of the trope points that the Red Sox usually have, right? The will they, won't they trade Jarren Duran? Do they, don't they like Tristan Casas? The big statements from our GM to ultimately also lead to this video, which is obviously the fact that the Red Sox owners have already kind of put the kibosh on the Red Sox spending a whole bunch of money, or at least that's what's being reported right now, which is going to make things really interesting for the Boston Red Sox, especially after this Sonny Gray trade. The exact report we are talking about today comes from an article from Sean McAdam. He reported that according to an industry source familiar with the organization's thinking, the Red Sox are okay going over the first CBT threshold set at $244 million for 2026, which would translate to them absorbing a modest financial loss, but with anything beyond that, there is a reluctance to incur bigger deficit. There are quite a few things that should bug you and really bug me about this report, but let's start, in my opinion, with a conversation about the modest financial loss here. I'm not sure where this report is coming from. I mean, I'm sure Sean McAdam and obviously the people that he talked to are much more up to date with the Red Sox financial status and everything like that. So there is probably something I'm missing here. From every indication that I can find, at least in terms of publicly available numbers here, the Boston Red Sox are the furthest thing in Major League Baseball from operating at a loss this season. Coming into 2025, from what we know, the Red Sox had a player expense of $237 million. The revenue they made in the 2024 season was $574 million. Their operating income coming into 2025 was $120 million, and their overall team value was at $4.8 billion, which is the third highest in the sport. Not only has their overall team value increased year to year every year since John Henry bought the Boston Red Sox, but coming into 2025, they were the only team in the sport to have an operating income over $100 million. The second highest operating income in the sport was the Chicago Cubs, who were at $81 million. From what we can find on public record, I have absolutely no idea why the Red Sox are sitting here saying that spending over the first luxury tax threshold will put them in a losing state. Even if you want to go back to when the Red Sox were spending the most in Major League Baseball, back in 2018, where it was the greatest Red Sox team of all time, that team, they had the highest payroll in baseball, and yet, despite that, they were in the positive. They had a positive operating income. I'm sorry, but until we get new data here, until we see, hey, the Boston Red Sox actually did take a loss last season to put themselves in a position of making the postseason for the last 4 years, I can't sit here and have any sort of other reaction other than this is BS to the Red Sox sitting here crying broke, right? I mean, we made fun of the New York Yankees for coming out here and saying, look, like it's an unfair statement to sit here and say that we are a positive income organization, when in reality, they're legitimately took a loss last season because of their player payroll and because of how they were translating dollars to wins. The Red Sox are sitting here, they're crying broke, and yet every single piece of evidence is saying you're not only not broke, you're one of the most wealthy teams in terms of year-to-year income in the entire entire game. You are coming into 2025 the most profitable team in the entire sport, right? So for them to sit here and say, look, we're going to take a loss to make you guys happy, but we can't go and stretch ourselves beyond that is incredibly difficult for me to comprehend, right? Even if you are going to take a loss this season, you've had what, five years in a row outside of the COVID year where you have been a positive net income team. 1 year, 2 years even of negative loss for your ball club, you still make up that profitability in years to come, right? Plus, not to mention, this doesn't include stuff like playoff bonuses, stuff like playoff marketing money, stuff like playoff ticket sales, right? All of that stuff doesn't get included in this one big number, so you're missing out on a whole lot of dollar revenues that the Red Sox could make if they were to even remotely take some sort of financial loss this season. So that part immediately boiled my blood, right? That part took me by surprise, and that part is what is really genuinely pissing me off about this quote from Sean McAdam. But we also got to talk about the real truth behind this here. The real truth is that we've heard this before. Their unwillingness to spend in the likes of two other teams in your division right now who are spending like a big market team should spend. In fact, we've probably talked about this exact conversation every single year since I started this channel, right? But I specifically want to go back to the conversation we had back in 2024 coming in to this latest 2025 season, because we did get a conversation like this, almost exactly like this back last season, right? Felt like John Henry just simply did not want to go that extra mile, but what ended up happening? The Red Sox, they traded for Garrett Crochet. They signed Bregman to a fat, albeit short, but fat contract that really put him into one of the highest paid players in Major League Baseball. On top of trading for Garrett Crochet, they signed Garrett Crochet to a pretty lucrative extension. They also added in an extension for Roman Anthony and an extension for Christian Campbell. They were able to put actual money on the table. Somehow, some way, Craig Breslow was, or whoever in that front office was able to convince John Henry that spending a little bit more extra money than what you were willing to spend coming into the 2025 offseason was going to be able to actually bring you a step forward, right? Actually find significant results that put you towards one of the top teams in the entire sport, which you were, right? You were one of the 12, I can't remember how many people make the postseason, including the wild card game. I think it's 12 teams in the entire sport, right? You sit there with all of that and you say, okay, well, how can you infer that the Red Sox are going to be willing to spend more than they're saying right now? Well, that all depends. Right, we've seen it before. Again, we talked about last season. Dave Dombrowski was a guy who was able to get John Henry out of his shell a little bit, get him to spend some money, and what happened? The Red Sox once again had the greatest Red Sox team of all time. They wiped their way to a World Series, and you were one of the best teams in Major League history. So you sit there and you say, yes, John Henry does not want to spend right now, but how can you change that, right? Can a guy like Craig Breslow have sort of this conversation, this aura about him like Dave Dombrowski did? Can Theo Epstein, who's now in the organization, have that sort of pull on John Henry? Can a guy like, can't believe I'm saying this, Sam Kennedy have some sort of pull in order to sort of bring John Henry out of his shell a little bit, prove to him that, hey, you may take an initial loss on this offseason, but you're going to make that up in other ways as we go through the season, and it's worth coming in and spending this much money, right? And even if you don't want to spend up to what your competition is spending, because even if the Red Sox can get John Henry to spend a little bit, we're never going to see the top payroll in baseball again, right? It's just simply not going to happen, and that's a reality I think all Red Sox fans have accepted, even though it's an unbelievably pathetic excuse for a baseball club who's the third most valuable in the entire sport. Regardless of my soapbox ranting here, even if he's not going to spend up to the level of the Toronto Blue Jays or the New York Yankees or whoever, you could still put together a very competent team while also just simply spending a little bit more, right? We aren't begging the Red Sox to have a $280 million payroll. We're simply begging for the Red Sox to put together a competent roster, and that is still possible while just simply having John Henry creak open that metal case where he keeps his dollars shut just a tiny little bit more. But what would that actually look like? Well, there are actually a few different scenarios in which the Red Sox can improve their roster while also pleasing the Red Sox hunger thirst for making the most money in the entire game. Our good friend here, Robbie Hyde, actually whipped up some different scenarios for the Boston Red Sox in 2026. Right now, the Red Sox payroll is sitting at $225 million. If they are going to go over the first luxury tax threshold, but staying under the second one to protect those precious earnings, that gives them about $40 million to spend. Specifically, it gives them up to to $264 million to spend. Now, again, this article isn't saying that they're willing to go up to $264 million, just that they are going to go over that $244 million, which is right now $19 million above where the Red Sox are currently at. It means that the Red Sox have to get a bit creative here with how they operate. Trading Masataka Yoshida feels like the obvious way to eat up a bit of their open money here, doesn't it? Even if you can't get a team to eat his whole deal, but you can get a team to eat half of his deal or whatever it may end up being, that is still another $8 million-ish off the book. On top of that, if you are, instead of going after a secondary pitching addition to this Red Sox rotation on the free agent market, but instead looking to trade for it, if you were to include a guy like Jarren Duran for a controllable frontline starter, in theory, you should be able to convert about $8 million a season into about $2 million a season, giving the Red Sox another $6 million to play around with. You get both of those done, you are now looking at around $35-ish million before the first luxury tax threshold, allowing you to do something where it's getting an Alex Bregman or an Alonso or whoever and pair that with an Okamoto or trade for a Ketel Marte, all while also picking up another starter. Obviously, much easier said than done, right? It's much easier for me to sit here and say, obviously, Craig, what you got to do is salary dump Masataka Yoshida, because in order to do that, you actually have to go out in the real world and find another team that's willing to take on that salary. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I do think it's a little bit easier to trade Masataka Yoshida this offseason than it was to trade him last offseason, but that certainly doesn't mean it's going to be an easy task for the Red Sox front office to figure out, right? And then obviously the Jarren Duran thing, right? We've talked about this before. If you're going to trade Jarren Duran, it can't just simply be to convert $8 million a season into $2 million a season, right? You can't salary dump a guy like Jarren Duran. Salary dumping a leader of this team, one of the better players on this team, just simply so you can afford to sign two bats is unbelievably pathetic in my opinion, right? The only reason you would trade Jarren Duran is to get something of equal value in return that would translate some of his talent into talent elsewhere on your roster. And in order to do that, you got to find someone who's willing to put up similar value, right? Which again is not going to be incredibly easy to find, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to do. Right? And if you're able to do those two things, you can add your two bats that you need. It's not most likely going to be at this point Bregman and Alonso or a Schwarber. It sounds like it's going to be one of those three and then a supplementary bat, but you could still improve this roster offensively, and you could still improve this roster on the pitching side of things as well. And I think that's where the Red Sox should be aiming their focus now that they've got Sonny Gray in the fold. And I really do hate this, right? I hate coming into off seasons and focusing on financials rather than, how a player translates to wins and losses, right? It feels like for the last 4 seasons, even last year, when the Red Sox did do some really great things that helped this team become a better winning ball club than they've been over the last 4 years, we still sat there for most of the offseason and talked about how these players affect the dollar and cents, and I find it a little bit ridiculous, right? I find it a little bit ridiculous that every offseason we find an article like this, that somebody somewhere is saying the Red Sox aren't going to spend any money, because again, you go back to the financials here and they're one of the most profitable teams in the sport. They're one of the most valuable teams in the sport, and yet they continue to act like they're not. They continue to act like Boston, New England. It's a smaller market. It's a market where you're just simply not going to be able to turn a profit if you invest in, and they know as well as we know that that's just simply not true. So to sit here and say that over and over again drives me absolutely crazy. I would love to come into an offseason and just simply focus on how the Red Sox can actually make this team better, as opposed to how the Red Sox are going to make this team more profitable. But unfortunately, it's just a necessary truth as a Red Sox fan at this point in our lifetimes, right? But to me, that doesn't mean I'm lowering the bar on what I expect from the Boston Red Sox, right? I'm not going to give them the excuse that they're looking for of crying poor. I'm just simply not going to do it, right? You need to improve this team. You need to include legitimate stars with some of your young potential superstars here. You need to enter this window of contention strong. You need to stay in this window of contention for a long time, and you need to compete with the other big markets in this league, because that's exactly who you are, and that's exactly the position you're in. I don't care whether or not you have to hold John Henry down by his hands and steal his wallet yourself. You need to find a way to make this work. right? And Craig Breslow, that is now his job. It's his job to figure out how to make this work. You can still be a competitive team while also pleasing the hunger for money that this that this ownership group has, right? We went over a few scenarios here that you could still get it done. There's absolutely no excuse in my mind, monetarily, player-wise, or front office-wise, that you could sit here and say that you don't deserve to get a player A, B, or C, right? You should be able to go and get everybody you need, and if you don't, it's time to scorch this thing to the goddamn ground, right? I'm just so sick and tired of talking about this. I just want one off season where we get a quote like, yeah, Henry's love of the game is back, and he's willing to spend whatever it takes to win a championship. When was the last time we heard that, right? We heard that a little bit this season, but it simply wasn't enough. Now you need to take that step forward, and I refuse to allow them to take anything else but that step forward, and that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think? What do you think about this latest article from the Red Sox? As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.